We live in a divided world. It's not a profound statement. If anything, it's a simple statement of fact. It's not a new reality, though our typical human tendency is to park the challenging history of our experience, and by compartmentalizing it, we can let it go, move on, look forward, not back. But the divided world we live in is forever in the present and impacts first the us of the moment and affects those who come after us secondarily. But like secondary smoke, the effects can definitely be all too real. So to say we live in a divided world should be nothing new to us here and now. Yet we balk at learning from history or the past because we rationalize it wasn't the same as what we are experiencing now. Sure, some of the details are different, but how often have we been reminded if we forget the past, we are bound to repeat it? When we are honest in our desire to learn from the historical past, the emotional past, and yes, even the spiritual and biblical past, then our eyes are much more likely to see how eerily similar the learning and lessons that we have brushed aside or completely forgotten are pertinent to our present reality. And that's one of the key reasons why the regular study and weekly corporate reading of Scripture, followed by sermon reflection, is core to the life of the community of God's people, the church. So let's dive in. We live in a divided world. From the beginning of his ministry, as told by St. Mark, Jesus has been dealing with divided houses and kingdoms. He has cast out demons, healed Peter's mother-in-law, cleansed a leper, and caused a paralytic to walk. The houses and kingdoms of these people were divided. The strong man had invaded their homes. Their lives were not their own. They live within a conflict and turmoil. They have been separated by their community or from their community and all that gave them security and identity. Their outer condition of illness, paralysis, and possession point to the inner conflict, the battle between health and disease, not just physically, but more importantly, spiritually. Does it sound familiar? It should. It is the repeated pattern of humanity. That battle and interior conflict has been around since Adam and Eve separated themselves from God and hid amongst the trees in the garden. It is seen in Israel's wanting a king so it can be like all the other nations around it, forgetting that it has a unique calling, that it is to be different from the other nations, that it is through Israel, the people of God, that God will act for the benefit of all people and all times. This division and inner conflict is a reality in today's world and our lives. Marriage divided is a divorce. A nation divided results in vitriolic politics and, in the extreme, civil war. An economy divided yields poverty and injustice. A community divided becomes individualism and tribalism, prejudice and violence. Humanity divided in all of these things is at a global level. Faith divided is sin. We all know what it is like to live divided lives. You know those times when your outsides and your insides don't match up exactly? That's what it means to have a divided house. You're one person at work and another at home. You act one way with certain people and a different way with other people. You get divided into pieces. Behavior, beliefs, ethics become situational. There is the work life, the family life, the prayer life, the personal life, the social life. Pretty soon we're left with a bunch of pieces of our life. Now, some of our specific present-day divided pieces may be named and recognized in these following thoughts. After some 15 months of COVID isolation and restriction, we seem to be in anticipation of the vaccine-induced return to a familiar normal. Yet individual rights seem to clash with corporate well-being, causing our humanitarian household to be divided. Do we want health, or do we want to be whatever it is that I want? Doesn't matter what others want. The have countries seem to be breaking through with this vaccine, while the have-not countries incubate more hazardous variants which threaten to challenge even the fully vaccinated. A divided house. As if the global pandemic were not enough to process. The wounds of past generations, which we like to think we have a handle on, are torn open again, deeply, in the revelation of a mass grave of First Nations children from the Kamloops residential school, run by those claiming to be the church, following a godly path played out in a genocidal reality. It seems that we are forever trying to put the pieces of our lives back together, and they keep getting pulled apart. That's why the crowd was gathered around Jesus. That's why the religious authorities opposed him. That's why his family tries to restrain him. In their own way, each is trying to put the pieces of their life together, but it's not working. They won't fit. They have been found out. Their brokenness revealed. Their life and their world are neither what they thought they were, nor what Jesus knows they could be. One reality has fallen and a new one is ready to rise. Jesus always stands before us as the image of unity, wholeness, integration. He is the stronger one. He does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. He puts our lives and our houses back in order. Jesus offers a different image of what life might look like. He does so by revealing the divisions of our lives and our hearts, the houses that cannot stand, and the crumbling of our kingdoms. Even when it is for our own good, with the offer of new life and intended for wholeness, that's a hard place for us to get to. It means that one way or another change of some sort is coming. Most of us don't like that. It is, and it can be, frightening. To have to change, to have to turn around, to have to become what God has called us to be. We heard in Scripture, he's gone out of his mind, the people say. The religious authorities accuse him of allegiance to Beelzebub, the ruler of demons. They project onto Jesus their own interior conflict and division, and they have declared that which is holy, sacred, and beautiful to be unclean, dirty, and bereft of God. Their accusations say more about themselves than Jesus. Their accusations reveal the depth of the conflict and the division within them. Their accusations are a way of avoiding themselves, putting it on someone else. It's hard to look at the division and the inner conflict within our lives and within our communities and within our world. The beginning of wholeness, however, is acknowledging our brokenness. Where is our own house divided? How and to what extent have we created conflict and division within our relationships? In what way do we live fragmented lives, parceling out pieces here and there? What is it that shatters our life? Anger, resentment, greed, insecurity, perfectionism, sorrow or loss, fear, envy, guilt, loneliness. There are so many things that we have lived and experienced, and maybe we haven't even recognized them. There are all sorts of forces, things, events, sometimes even people by which our lives are broken and through which we are separated from God, others, and ourselves. Christ is stronger than anything that fragments our lives. That's the message of the gospel reading today. That is why the crowds persisted in gathering around Jesus. They wanted more. He binds the forces that divide. He heals the wounds that separate and refashions pieces into a new whole, the way of God. He spoke words of life that resonate even today. Isn't that the very thing we yearn for today? There is nothing about your life or my life that cannot be put back together, set in order, aligned with the very giver of life by the love of God in Jesus Christ. Do we have ears to hear and eyes to see the wonders